So, first of all, thank you everybody for jumping, number one, on call or actually coming here on a Saturday morning. I know you guys probably have a lot of other things you guys could be doing, but I really do appreciate you guys coming over here. So, I've gone ahead and I've done a couple of these talks before. And usually I go ahead and I talk about what it's like starting a company, or I go ahead and I talk about the journey and all of that stuff. But I figured that you guys can probably already get that type of stuff online. You can read books, you can read blogs. And there's been a really, really interesting trend that I've been noticing lately, which is it's almost cool to look like you're not trying or you're not trying to do cool shit or hard shit. We go online and we see people just going through life, and we see people that are trying to do difficult things, referred to as cringe and made fun of and things like that. And then the other thing I've noticed is there's a lot of permission. People are seeking permission to do things. And this is one of my favorite sayings. It's actually a direct tweet from Sam Altman, which is, you can just do things. As a matter of fact, that's why it's all lowercase, because that's how he tweeted it. So that's why I was like, the title of this talk is going to be, You Can Just Do Things. So I think I'm a decent person to go ahead and talk about this. And the reason for that is I don't expect any of you guys to know who I am, but I'll give you a little bit of my background. So I was born and raised in Miami, and I had a really, really unconventional childhood. When most people think Miami, they think the beaches and all of that. I actually grew up on a small farm with horses, chickens, and goats. And after high school, I had an opportunity to actually go to school in Boston. And when I got to school in Boston, what I really, really enjoyed was that there was this really tech-forward ecosystem where people weren't afraid to dream big, weren't afraid to think about new ways and look at things in a different manner. And so one night, I really wanted pizza from my favorite pizza shop, and they wouldn't deliver to campus. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool if there was an app that let me rent a car from another student? And so I shared it with my brother, my twin brother, and he said, let's build it. So we built this really ugly app, but it was just good enough that it allowed us to rent cars from other students on campus. And you can see, this is us working in the dorm room. We went to a small school called Babson College, and in between classes, on weekends, at night, we would work on this app. And the app ended up becoming a top 100 app on the App Store. It became the second highest ranked car sharing app in the United States. And within a couple of months, we had cars on more than 500 college campuses in all 50 states. So I thought I was going to be the next Mark Zuckerberg, and I withdrew from school. And then the pandemic hit and college campuses shut down. And that was problematic because, again, we were built for college students. We were the first company in the US that allowed people under the age of 25 to rent cars without restrictions. So the fact that college campuses were shut down was really crappy for us. So what did we do? I looked like an idiot because I had just withdrawn from school. My parents were like, what the hell are you doing? My girlfriend's family at the time was really bugging me about it too. And so I ended up deciding to pivot. And not only me, but my brother. So we ended up seeing an opportunity to do something in the insurance space. And so we started a company called LULA. Now, again, I don't have a background in insurance. I don't come from the industry. But what I saw was, as I built that app, I saw there were a lot of inefficiencies when it came to insurance. Everybody wants cheaper, faster, better insurance. And so we thought we can go ahead and do something different here. And so we ended up building LULA. And I'm not going to go into all the details, but in short, over the course of 3.5 years, we took that business from nothing to, at its peak, it was worth over $500 million. We got $45 million in equity capital from some of the best investors in the world, like Peter Thiel, Vinod Khosla, Bill Ackman, Steve Pagliuca. And I had an opportunity to sell the business a couple of months ago. So that was a really, really great journey. And that was a really great and exciting opportunity. And then we ended up, a couple of us from LULA, ended up building a company called Gail, which today, if you go online, there's not much about Gail. We are doing the worst job ever of being in stealth mode, but we are announcing Gail to the public later this quarter. So that's why if you go on the website and stuff like that, it's rather vague. There's not much information about it. But Gail became the first artificial intelligence really in the world that was capable of passing insurance licensing exams. And it's been able to pass insurance licensing exams in 4 states already: Florida, Texas, New York, and California, where large language models like GPT and Bard were scoring consistently in the 50th and 55th percentile on their exams. Gail has consistently performed in the 93rd percentile. And my favorite story is that we had insurance tutors come and teach Gail and train Gail. And by one of Gail's last exams, the tutor and Gail had a difference of opinion on 14 questions. And Gail went ahead and explained its logic for those 14 questions. And by the end of it, the tutor changed his opinion on every single one. So that's a little bit about me. Now, why do I go ahead and I share all of that? Well, this is one of the quotes that changed my life. And this is really where I would go ahead and say, everything that I just mentioned to you started with this. When I got to college, I had no ambitions or aspirations about going and starting my own company. As a matter of fact, I had wanted to go work on Wall Street. But I started to go ahead and see technology and the way it could solve problems. And then I came across this quote, and the quote, "Everything around you that you call life was made up by people that were no smarter than you, and you can change it, you can influence it, you can build your own things that other people can use." So I read this quote, and if you don't know who said this quote was said by Steve Jobs. And this was really impactful for me because a couple of days later, I end up going to New York. And I'm standing in the middle of New York, and I'm looking at every single taxi. I'm looking at every single building. I'm looking at every single hot dog stand. I'm looking at the streets, the subways, everything. And I'm like, oh my gosh, everything around me was built by somebody not much different, not much smarter than me. And I started to realize, why can't that be me? And I'm not trying to go ahead and be a motivational speaker here. It's not my goal. I'm not trying to be an Instagram sales guru or sell you a course. It's not my goal. It's not my goal here. My goal here is I want, this is something that I always say at the company. One of your goals as a leader, one of your goals as a team lead, one of your goals as a founder is to go ahead and raise the average level of ambition across your organization. If you can take really, really intelligent people like all of yourself here and take your level of ambition from, say, on a scale of 1 to 10, from a 6 out of 10 or a 7 out of 10, and get you to a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10, we've really, really done something special. I've been really fortunate that I have been able to, I'll give you some crazy facts. I grew up on a small farm. I had no connections. In my prior company, LULA, and in my new company today, almost 2 to 3% of America's billionaires are direct investors in the company. Why do I go ahead and I say that? I've now had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with some really intelligent, some really successful people. We have offices today in Miami. We have offices in San Francisco. We have team members in Mexico, in Costa Rica, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania. I often get asked, what is the big difference between South Florida and San Francisco? What's the big difference between the East Coast and the West Coast? And what I always tell people, and it really shocks them, is I go ahead and I say, San Francisco, people on the West Coast are more ambitious. And they say to me, what? What are you talking about? New York, Miami, people have this strong desire for money. They're obsessed with it. They want the cars, the buildings. And I said, yeah, that's true. They want cars, they want watches, they want real estate. But in San Francisco, you go over there, they're talking about getting rockets to Mars. They're talking about implanting chips in your brain so that people that are paralyzed can walk again. They're talking about, humans have biological neurons. What if we can go ahead and create artificial ones? And what if we can go ahead and replicate neural networks and all of that stuff? And to me, that's the type of ambition that really excites me and that really interests me. And when I come to places really on the East Coast, I don't see a lot of that ambition. And that is one of the things I'm trying to go ahead and change. So at our company, I'm always trying to go ahead and raise the average level of ambition across the organization. I'm always trying to go ahead and say, what are your goals? What are your dreams? Let's go ahead and think bigger. And to me, it really pisses me off that, say you guys, let's go ahead and say you guys want to build really, really cool stuff or work on really difficult problems. You're here at the University of Florida. You're super, super, super excited to go do that. And then you get out of university and your only job options in Florida, and I mean this in a non-offensive way, is like UKG or a basic defense manufacturing firm in Melbourne. That's yeah. I mean, Lockheed is they're kind of a joke, to be honest with you. So anyways, I wanted to go ahead and just highlight 3 people that I think are really good sources of inspiration. These are people, they didn't wait for permission. And that's a big thing. A lot of people today go ahead and they say, man, I have this dream, man, I want to try this thing. And then they go ahead and they wait and they seek permission. They seek permission from their friends. They seek permission from their peers. And sometimes permission isn't, hey, can I do this? Sometimes permission is, hey, I have this idea. And you're hoping that the other person says, yeah, it's a really good idea. But the problem is, and this is something really important, really, really, really good ideas. If I share a really good idea with you today, and it's somewhat novel, I would love if 50% of the people in the room think I'm an idiot, and 50% of the people in the room think I'm a genius. If 100% of the people in the room think I'm a genius, well, then the solution I'm solving or the problem I'm solving is too obvious. If 100% of the people here think I'm an idiot, well, then maybe I'm actually not really doing very well. So a lot of times we seek permission. And that's one thing which I'm like, don't seek permission. If you have an idea, if you have something you want to pursue, go ahead and find ways to validate it. Go ahead and find ways to test it, iterate it. So I'll go ahead and I'll walk you through a couple of my favorite people. So if you guys are not familiar with this is the Wright brothers. The Wright brothers, if you guys do not know, were the guys that invented the first plane. Now, what people don't realize is that these guys owned a bicycle shop. So they were not engineers. In fact, they owned their own bicycle shop. And what people often don't know is that they were also going ahead and competing against the federal government. There were federal programs where the Wright brothers were competing with that were giving their folks $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $100,000. The Wright brothers went ahead and they built that plane and different iterations of that. And over the course of 5 or 6 years, they spent less than $1,000. Now, obviously that was a long time ago, but nevertheless, these guys, the Wright brothers, when they wanted to fly this plane, they couldn't go to their backyard. They had to put this thing on a trailer. They had to travel 600 miles. They were going to the beach. That's where they were doing their testing. They didn't wait around and ask for permission. They just went ahead and they tried to build cool shit. That's basically, and guess what? Obviously, the world has forever been changed because of these 2 guys. This guy, he's not a very well-known face, but we all know his company. This is Phil Knight. Phil Knight was a runner at Oregon. Phil Knight studied accounting. Phil Knight was actually in the Army. Phil Knight went ahead and he did his MBA. And while he's at Stanford, he hears about how the Japanese have taken over the camera industry. And he identifies an opportunity. He says, I wonder if the Japanese are also going to take over the shoe industry. And he writes his senior paper on it. And this introverted accountant, by the way, he was also teaching statistics in a university. He has no experience in making shoes. He's never manufactured shoes before. He has no experience whatsoever selling. As a matter of fact, he basically got fired from 2 prior jobs, selling encyclopedias and selling bonds, because he was so bad at it. And then he had obviously no marketing experience. And guess what he did? He went, booked a flight, went to Japan by himself, literally went to Japan by himself in the 1960s. And he went ahead and he put in an order of $50 for a couple of shoes. And they shipped them over to his parents' house. And he started to go ahead and sell shoes. At the time, he was selling for a company, I forget the name, Tiger. They're called Tiger. Today, they're known as ASICs. So this is a guy, again, didn't have a background, didn't seek permission. He saw an opportunity and he went ahead and took it. And today, it's Nike. By the way, phenomenal book. If you guys ever want a good book, Shoe Dog. It's my favorite biography. This woman, you guys probably don't know who this is. This is Estee Lauder. Estee Lauder is phenomenal. She was really, there's no really normal way of saying this. She was kind of a crazy person to go ahead and compete against. And I mean that in the most really respectful way possible. This is a woman that her goal was to touch more faces by the time that she died than anybody else in the history of the world. That was her goal, because she would walk onto trains, she would walk into the hotels, she would walk into the lobbies, into the malls, and she would go ahead and ask women if she could apply makeup on their face. And again, no background whatsoever in makeup, no background whatsoever in cosmetics, no background in any of that. She just had a really, really, really big passion for the cosmetic industry. And guess what? Estee Lauder today is a $20 billion company. Her family still owns it. So my point being is that you don't need to seek permission. As a matter of fact, I would love if all of you guys, if you guys have an idea, you guys want to build and do amazing things, do not let the world shit on your parade. And I really, really do mean that. One of the things I was talking to somebody yesterday is a lot of people go ahead and they think that high school or that college is the most fun time in your life. I can tell you that I had a really fun time in high school. I can tell you I had a really fun time in college. But I can tell you I have a lot more fun today on a day-to-day basis, because I get to work on really cool problems. I get to build really cool technologies. I get to go ahead and serve people. By the time LULA was acquired, LULA was servicing almost 6,000 businesses on a daily basis and almost 10 million people annually. Today, Gail, just on a daily basis, I haven't even looked at the numbers for today, but I can guarantee you that in the last 2 hours, Gail has managed over 200,000 or 300,000 conversations alone. So think about that. That is really fun stuff to work on. That is really, really fun and fulfilling stuff to work on. Now, again, coming back to this, you can just do things. If you want to go ahead and build an application, build the application. If you want to go ahead and write a research paper, write the research paper. If you want to go ahead and try to build your own model, build your own models, fine-tune your own models. If you want to go ahead and learn how to program or learn how to code, you don't need permission for any of this. So the first thing that, if there's a takeaway from this conversation, you don't need permission. You can just do things. Like literally, if you want to be a chef and make pizza tonight, you can literally just go to Publix, get the ingredients, and make pizza. You want to build an app, launch it to the App Store, just code it. You don't know how to code? Well, now you have Cursor, you have Replit, you have Windsurf, you have Claude. Just go do it. This is something a lot of people say, follow your passion. If I had to go ahead and rephrase that, I would say follow your curiosity. I'll give you an example. I love basketball. My dream, if I had one dream today, I would be playing in the NBA. Do I look like somebody that's going to play in the NBA? No way. No. Yeah, exactly. I actually got I got mistaken for him the other day in the airport. But the reason I go ahead and I say this, when I got to college, I never thought that I would end up in technology. I never thought that I would end up in programming, but I was really curious. I let my curiosity drive me. I let my curiosity take me to meetings and in rooms that I never thought I would ever be a part of. So a lot of people say, follow your passion. If I had followed my passion, I would have ended up trying to be a sports agent. I would have ended up trying to work for the Miami Heat or being part of the UF athletic department and things like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to follow your passion, that's fine, do it. But I often think that you should also be interested in following your curiosity. Some of my favorite people that I have ever worked with or that I've ever met are also the most curious. If you find yourself just reading random ass Wikipedia pages, that's really great. If you find yourself just reading random books, that's really great, or random podcasts, but follow your curiosity. You follow your passion too, but follow your curiosity. It'll take you places you can never imagine. This is one of my favorite sayings. I didn't come up with it. There's a really, really great writer. His name is Paul Graham. He's big in the startup world, but he says, I don't know if you guys read biographies. I love biographies. I know that self-help books are big right now and all that stuff. Management books are big right now. Business books are big right now. I actually found that biographies, I like them more than any of those that I just mentioned. Why? Biographies, you learn how did the best people in the world think about product? How do they think about marketing? How do they deal with really difficult moments? How do they deal with negotiations? How do they sell? So I find that biographies are just really, really, really good self-help books, really good management books, really good sales books, marketing books. Biographies are fantastic. But one of the things that you realize when you read biographies, and I can talk about this in my own life, is you realize how lucky people get. And so it's easy to go ahead and look at somebody's success and discount that as a function of luck. What people don't tend to realize is that you can make yourself a big target for luck. I'll give you guys an example. When I was in my dorm room, I didn't know any investor. My family didn't have connections to investors. So what did I do? My app started to go viral, and I went ahead and I sent out 532 emails. And I'm not talking about like generic emails. I'm talking about over the course of 2 weeks, I went ahead and I crafted over 500 emails with my brother. Investor 526 that I reached out to was the first one to invest. Now, you can go ahead and say that was lucky. Sure, but I had 525 interactions before Ali Reza from Plug and Play invested. In summer of 2020, when my first company, LULA Rides, had just died, and I was trying to go ahead and figure out what I was going to do, I go on Twitter and I see a guy by the name of Lee Hauer, who's a big investor out of Boston, was saying that despite there being a worldwide economic shutdown, he and his venture capital firm were still making investments in products that were servicing the everyday economy. What did I go ahead and do? I reached out to him and I said, hey, I'm thinking about a product that's going to serve the everyday economy. And I think I have my first couple of customers. We got on a call. 48 hours later, he made an offer to invest. Now, that's lucky, sure, but that would have never happened if I had never went ahead and reached out to him. And that guy, just so you have a sense, one of the first employees at PayPal, who's hired personally by Elon, ends up being a co-founder of LinkedIn. And the rest is history. He's done very well for himself. He has so many cars, he has a full-on warehouse a couple of blocks down from his house. But you want to make yourself a big target for luck. One thing that I would often do in college is I would try to go ahead and reach out to people that I really admired. I would reach out to CEOs of large companies. I would reach out to entrepreneurs that I admired. I would reach out to billionaires. And you would be surprised at how many people actually respond to you, especially if you're a student. People want to help you. You're not seen as a competitive threat. So I would go ahead and I would say student seeking help or student seeking advice. And you would be surprised at how many doors that opened for me. Now, again, somebody hears the story, they're like, oh, you got lucky. I'm like, sure, call it luck, but I sent 1,000 emails to go ahead and get these meetings. So you want to make yourself a big target for luck. You want to make yourself a big target for opportunity. How do you do that? Put yourself out there. Come to events like this, although don't do it too much. Some of these events, not saying this one, but some of these events can be a waste of time. But go ahead and if you're a programmer, publish on your GitHub. If you are a designer, go ahead and have your own website. If you are interested in research, go ahead and publish research papers or try to contribute to research papers. You want to go ahead and make yourself a big target for luck. That is a lot more in your control than people think. I'm the perfect example of that. This is something that I don't think a lot of people realize, but if you think about the best businesses in the world, they're problem-solving machines. If you think about the entrepreneurs, if you think about the folks that you probably most admire, they're problem-solving machines. Think about Elon. Elon solves problems really, really well. Think about Jeff Bezos. He solves problems really, really well. Think about Sam Altman. They solve problems really, really well. Think about your favorite athlete. Why is LeBron James so highly regarded? Well, he solves really good problems, which is if you want to win, get LeBron James on your team. If you're tired of losing, get LeBron James on your team. So the best people in the world solve problems. Why are musicians? Think about Bad Bunny. Think about Billie Eilish. What problem do they solve? People want to be entertained. They do a really good job entertaining you. So solve problems, solve problems. And this is not only at the level of a business. This is at the individual level too. Let's go ahead and say that you're trying to work at a company like OpenAI, or you're trying to work at a company like Gail, for example. Yes, we go ahead and we accept applications and stuff like that. One of my favorite ways to get talent is somebody comes to the website, says, and then emails me, hey, Michael, the website looks shitty. I think that you need to fix this. I'm like, great, come fix it for me. And you'd be surprised, we've hired a couple of people like that. If you want to go ahead, there's a really, really good, one of my favorite papers of all time is by a guy called Richard Hamming, You and Your Research. And what he talks about is if you want to be an important person, solve important problems. If you want to be important to your customer, well, solve their most important problems. If you want to be important to your team or to your organization, get really good at solving their problems. If you want to go ahead and get hired by a company, show that you can help solve their problems. The best businesses, the best founders, the people that do really, really well in life tend to go ahead and be really good at solving problems. Now, you may say to me, oh my gosh, Michael, I see this idiot on TikTok going viral and making millions. What problem are they solving? Well, they're entertaining people. People want to be entertained. People want to scroll. That's a problem they're solving. Whether we like it or not, they're solving a problem. And again, as I come to a conclusion here, I just want to go ahead and reiterate, because I really do think this is something that I'm passionate about, which is go and just do things. You have an idea, go and try it out. Go and test it out. You fail, guess what? Who cares? Try again. I don't know if you guys have ever heard this, but if you're in the stock market, let's say I went ahead and I'm overgeneralizing here. You only lose money when you sell, right? So you only fail if, well, you only lose money if you sell or the stock goes to zero and the company goes bankrupt, right? So you only fail if you stop and die, right? And you never have the ability to redeem yourself. I was listening to a really good podcast earlier this week on a guy called Ken Griffin. He's the founder and CEO of a large hedge fund called Citadel. And the company started in the early 90s. And for 20 straight years, they never had a down quarter. Actually, they never even had a down week. Think about that. For 20 years in a row. 2008 comes around, the global recession, they get absolutely decimated. They lost almost 70% of their equity value in the course of a couple of days. Think about that. What's one of the takeaways from Ken Griffin? Ken Griffin says, well, I've probably lost more money than anybody else in the world. He says, I've had years, I don't know how this is possible, but he says, I've had years where I and the firm have lost over $100 billion in 1 year. But he says, history is written by the winners. And the amazing part is he goes, but yes, I've probably lost more money than anybody else in the world, but I've also made more money as a hedge fund than probably anybody else in the world. And so guess what? You fail. Who cares? I have gone ahead. I've had a lot of early success in my life. I've also had failures you can't imagine. I've had failures really publicly. I've had failures that are really embarrassing. I've had failures where I'm like, damn, I don't even want to leave my apartment today. That's just the nature of the beast. One of my favorite podcasters is a guy by the name of David Senra. He talks about doing hard things, trying new things, like going on a boat. He says, if you don't want to get wet, then why the hell are you on a boat? If you don't want to fail, then don't try new things. And guess what? Winners, the irony here is that winners tend to lose more than losers do. Winners tend to fail more than losers do. Why? Because winners try new shit. Think about how many times Apple and Amazon have come out with a new product that doesn't work. So they keep shipping. Just keep shipping. So just go and do things. All of you guys are really young. All of you guys are at a great university like UF. All of you guys I know are above average intelligence because you're here on a Saturday morning in a data science symposium. That's not normal. That's something nerds do, which is, I'll tell you this, nerds run the world. So if somebody calls you a nerd, say thank you. If somebody says you're a little weird, say thank you. Being a normie sucks. Don't be a normie. And I'll go ahead and I'll leave it here. My email, this is my personal email. It's michael@meetgail.com. One of the things I'm trying to do, and it's why I'm over here, is an organization is often the vector sum of the people in the company, right? So what we want to go ahead and do is, I'm sick and tired of seeing engineers from South Florida, from the southeastern part of the US, have to go out to San Francisco and New York and Boston to build really cool projects and just do really cool shit. We have offices in San Francisco. I tend to be out there quite a bit, but nevertheless, I was born and raised in Miami. So what we want to go ahead and do is we want to go ahead and hire and work with really, really, really intelligent people, really curious people, fast learners, people that work extremely hard, and people that want to go ahead and build and do cool things. So now I just realized I never told you guys what Gail does. I'll tell you just shortly what Gail does. So again, we haven't announced it publicly, but what we found is that when I go speak with an insurance executive or when I go speak to business owners, I don't have to convince them on the benefits of AI. The benefits are pretty obvious. But what I did find is that adoption rates are really low. So depending on the industry, depending on the market, I'm talking about adoption rates of 5, 7, 10, 12, 15%. So you say if the benefits are so obvious, why the hell is adoption so low? And it really comes down to a couple of reasons. Number one, there's a lot of concern around compliance and accuracy. Number two, generic AI is really great if you want to talk about American history. It's not always so great if you want to talk about a highly regulated or highly specialized topic. And then number three, most businesses are not Amazon and Microsoft. They don't have all of these engineers internally that could build their own AI tools or their own AI solutions. And so they often much rather buy versus build. And so that was the opportunity that we saw. we saw there was an opportunity to introduce artificial intelligence to perhaps the largest industry in the world, which is financial services. Financial services is really awesome. It's a really, really great place to start because I always ask people, what does open heart surgery, a mortgage, and a mortgage and a car loan all have in common? They're impossible to get without insurance, right? So anyways, we initially started out by building AI agents specifically for the world of financial services, working with banks, working with insurance companies. And over time, it's evolved. So we've grown from basic AI agents to today we have, think ChatGPT, but specifically for the insurance industry and specifically for the insurance industry and banking industry. And what we've been around for just a couple of months. We actually spun it out of my prior company. So we went ahead and I took all of the acquisition proceeds that I got. My brother did as well. And we went ahead and we seeded the company. And we also have been very fortunate that a lot of our prior investors have also doubled down in the company. So we will be announcing later this quarter, we will be announcing an $8.2 million seed round. And as of today, we are currently working with about 220 companies across 4 countries. Gail, like I mentioned, is managing about 800,000 to 1.2 million customer conversations a day. That's across 4 countries, across now more than half a dozen different languages. Today, we work with 3 of the largest insurance companies in the United States. We work with 3 of the largest banks across North America and South America. And I know a lot of you guys are interested in internship opportunities or even work opportunities. We are hiring aggressively on the engineering side. We are hiring aggressively on really the engineering side. If anybody here, yeah. Well, if anybody here is interested in engineering, anybody here is interested in fine-tuning models, building out your own models, ragging models, just like you want to go ahead and experiment, please do not hesitate to reach out. I'm super, super, super available. Recruiting. So there's probably nothing more important than recruiting. Recruiting. It's interesting. If you go ahead and you look at some of the early communications between Sam and Elon about OpenAI, Elon is just like, go hire the best people, go look for undergrads or grads, try to get them out. You're going to find a lot of opportunity there. And so what I'm basically doing is I've taken it upon myself to go out and I'm really going on a recruiting tour. So today the company is about 25, 30 people. Most of the team engineers. I'm still on the keyboard, which is really fun. My brother's still on the keyboard. It's a really, really fun, hacky environment. And that's pretty much it. I know I'm probably a little bit early, but I'm happy to answer any questions if you guys have any. And if not, it was great talking to you guys. Yeah.
So when you're starting a company, how did you find people I know you said you worked with your brother, but to be passionate about it and start working on it with you when they know it's nothing yet? How do you make people feel the same way you do about the problem you're trying to solve?
Well, there's a couple of ways to do that. Well, number one, you just need to accept you're probably not going to be able to do that for most people. So that's just an important thing to note. But one of the things that really attracts people, and this is in all aspects of life, but it really pertains heavily in the world of business and the world of startups, is momentum. My brother always talks about this in the company. He says, and this is perhaps a bit cliche, but he says, if you see somebody on the side of the road with their thumb like this, you're never going to stop, right? If you see somebody trying to push the car or push the vehicle, you're much more likely to actually stop and help them push the vehicle. And it turns out that startups are a lot like that. If you go ahead and you say, hey, I have this business idea, and you're just ideating it, it's just an idea on a napkin, that's going to be really, really difficult to go ahead and recruit for or get people to buy in. But if you go ahead, little things, you have a website, you have an app, you found your first 3 customers, you found your first 3 users. Suddenly that makes it a lot more real. So I always, and my brother always says this, is if you want people to join you in pushing the vehicle, you often have to start pushing the vehicle by yourself. It's going to be a lot more difficult to get people to push the vehicle if you're just standing still and standing just there. So the point there is find a way to get momentum. Momentum can be build a website, get people to sign up, even if it's go get 3 people to sign a piece of paper that they like your product or they like your idea and they're willing to use it if you build it. But the most important thing I think is momentum. And then the other thing is storytelling. So storytelling is really, really, really powerful. I mean, I cannot emphasize how important it is to storytell the power of a good story. Once you have your idea, once you have your narrative, go ahead and practice the story as you walk, practice the story in front of your mirror, practice the story as you drive, when you're in your shower, like literally make it a thing you do all day long. I remember early on, I would go ahead and I would pretty much be practicing the story all day long. I'll give you guys a funny story. So when LULA Rides, my first business was starting, I spent all summer practicing my 30-second and my 60-second elevator pitch. So when I went back to campus that fall, I was so excited that I was going to destroy everybody in the pitch competitions. So I went to the first event of the year and they asked for a 3-minute pitch. They're having a 3-minute pitch competition. And immediately I shot up my hand and I was like, I'm going to go ahead and show that I've been practicing this amazing pitch and all this stuff. I get up in front of a huge room. The president of the school is there. The dean is there. And I killed the first 60 seconds. And then I blanked out. I'd never done a 3-minute pitch. And I go, oh, fuck. It was really embarrassing. But the power of a story is it's momentum and storytelling. Yeah. Yeah.
What book has inspired you the most and why?
My favorite book, Shoe Dog. Shoe Dog. And the reason for that, Shoe Dog it's the founding story of Nike. And it's a really, really, really raw autobiography. And a lot of biographies read them and the person talks about the struggles and says the story, and then the last 50 to 60% of the book is how they're rich now and they're doing all this philanthropic stuff. But Shoe Dog is really fantastic because number one, you see what he does. Interestingly enough, is Nike started in 1962. It started as a company called Blue Ribbon. And what he does is he takes you year by year, 1962, 1963, till they go public in, I think, 1979 or 1980. And then that's when the book ends. And so the story starts him really broke at 24 years old. You see, by the time he's 35, 36, he's been at this for like 11 years. He goes on a trip with one of his best friends. His card gets declined as he's renting a car. He almost starts to cry. He's so embarrassed. His friend is doing really well. 4 or 5 years later, Nike goes public. And in 1979 he's worth like $160 million. And I think that is a really, really good story because it shows you that success, number one, it's never linear. The concept of little by little and suddenly all at once is very, very real. In addition to that, very rarely do you see overnight success. I know that we tend to see that online, but that's often not the case. And then in terms of actually learning, there's a lot of good learnings in the book. Learning how to sell, learning how to negotiate, learning how to manage, learning his hiring philosophy, his marketing philosophy, his sales philosophy, his product philosophy. So that book is really good. Not only is it really inspiring, if you just want to go ahead and purely read a book that just has like the most learnings per page, everything store, it's Jeff Bezos. It's by Brad Stone, and it's pretty much like a mini bio on Jeff Bezos and Amazon. And then, so I would say like those are among 2 of my favorite books. Probably the most inspiring one is James Dyson, the guy that started the Dyson vacuum cleaner. That's a really, really inspiring one too. Yeah. Yeah.
So you talk about raising the ambition of those around you and your company and finding those people. What would you say is the I guess, your go-to to raising the ambitions of the people around you and trying to inspire others? Especially as, we're student leaders trying to get other people to see what we see.
Well, the first thing is that in my experience, a lot of people are not ambitious or not as ambitious as I think they should be, not because they don't want to, but because they've never been exposed to it. So for example, it's really difficult to go ahead. I'll give you an example. When I was growing up, I grew up on a small farm. So when I was growing up, I never had exposure to computers and apps. And suddenly when I go to Boston, I'm exposed to this entire new world of software, computers. I go ahead and I follow my curiosity. I get introduced to IBM Watson, which was one of the first really popular AI programs. And I go ahead and I start seeing that you have these computers, you have these artificial brains that are suddenly being used to treat cancer. An MRI scan that would have taken 20 minutes to read is now being read in 20 seconds. And so I find that exposure is one of the primary ways to go ahead and increase that ambition. That's number one. Number two, it often has to come from the leader. Not only do you have to expose them, but you often have to go ahead and impose it. So one thing I always do at the company is if we're setting sales numbers, I always add a zero. So you come to me and you're like, I want to do $100 of sales. I'm like, great, let's do 1,000. And the understanding there is, they're probably not going to hit $1,000, right? But I would rather have somebody shoot for $1,000, completely bomb, and only get to $500, so a 50% hit, versus somebody shoot for $100 and get to 120, and now they're celebrating because they hit their quota. So a lot of it has to come from the leader. And that's a really difficult thing as a leader. A lot of times you want to be liked. A lot of times you want to be liked and you want everything to go ahead and be cohesive and things like that. And what I found is that a lot of times it is necessary to go ahead and push. And if you're not getting, it's really difficult to go ahead and push your team to new heights if you're not annoying them quite a bit. So you have to be okay not being liked. Now, I'm not saying be disrespectful. I'm not saying be abusive, but certainly you should be pushing your team. You should be saying, hey, I believe that you can do better. You're made for more. And then the last thing that I would go ahead and say is, and I mean, I can talk about this at length, but one of the last things I would go ahead and say on that point is you want to go ahead and be an example. So for example, at the company, I will never ask the team to do something that I would never do. If I ask them to go ahead and we have a timeline on Friday and it's a really, really ambitious one, instead of telling them you need to do it, guess what I'm doing? I'm staying in the office with them till 2 a.m. I'm ordering them dinner. If they're ready to go, they don't need to take public transportation. We're paying the Uber. So really going ahead and being there in the trenches with them. And so I find it's a couple of different things. And then the last thing I would say is you want to build a culture and you want to foster a culture where it's okay to fail. So if you want your team to push things, to try to really achieve amazing things, significant things, but they're afraid of failure because they're afraid they're going to lose their job or they're going to get reprimanded, that's a really tough environment. And so those are some of the things that I would go ahead and say, but really it starts with the leader.
So I'm sorry. I'm part of an entrepreneurship initiative, which is basically like ran by the head honcho of my electrical and computer engineering department. The guy's got wisdom. I feel like previously he's maybe shut down my ideas for like a variety of reasons, and he wants me to like kind of go after his own ideas. But I feel like I just don't have the same give a fuck as he does. You know what I mean? I also think that when it comes to like, so taking his advice and like weighing that versus other people's advice, I almost feel like when I'm talking to people about these ideas, I want them to like tear me apart because like the more questions that are difficult for me to answer, like I guess more generally, like how do I approach that? Other people's advice. You say you want 50% of people think you're a dumbass and 50% of people think you're Einstein. How do you facilitate that and weight, what everyone's saying?
Well, what I always do is I try to go ahead and validate it myself. So for example, if I'm going to go ahead and launch a new product or new business, Really, if you think about what a company is, especially in the early days, it's a science experiment. You have a hypothesis, and then you need to go ahead and test whether that hypothesis is true or not. So when you go ahead and you ask me, what do I go ahead and do in those situations? I go ahead and I have a very simple problem I'm trying to solve, and I have a really simple solution that I'm trying to implement. And I go ahead and I see whether the market's interested in that. And guess what? Let's go ahead and say, and this happens often, let's go ahead and say you've identified an opportunity. Now, your professor, your parents, maybe some of your colleagues disagree, but there's no better market validation than going ahead and having 3, 5, 10 customers go ahead and say, yep, I want to buy your product, right? Now, if you're going ahead and talking to 5, 10, 20, 30 customers and nobody wants to buy what you're selling, well, that's problematic. But I would go ahead and say, you want to treat it like a test, like an experiment, like a science experiment. You want to go ahead and have a hypothesis and then go ahead and validate the hypothesis or get to the truth as quickly as possible. So for example, one great way to do that is waiting lists, letters of intent, proof of concept. Like those are all ways to go ahead and validate your hypothesis.
Question about LULA rides.
Yeah.
So I'll frame it in context. The stuff that I'm working on with my team, we're all more of the technical side. We're all engineers. We have ideas and we read stuff about marketing or selling. So my question is in 2 parts for LULA rides. The first is at Babson. How did you make it big at Babson, first of all? Because I believe your background is in finance and IT, at least that's what you studied. And then the second part of that is how did you expand it beyond Babson? I think that's like the harder question. How do you get to other campuses that you don't have feet in?
Well, one of the big lessons that I learned is you're better off trying to find, number one, you're better off trying to find one customer that truly loves your product versus 10 that are indifferent or mediocre towards it. So first of all, start off with trying to get one customer that absolutely loves the product. It's advantageous, by the way, if you're the customer. If you're truly building for yourself, because you face this problem, you're solving the problem for yourself. One great way to build product is you have a problem, solve that problem for yourself. Then go ahead and find 2 or 3 other people that have that same problem and sell them that product or that service. And go ahead and do a really good job at it. People talk about scale all the time. I'll give you an example. First year, we had maybe 35 customers. Second year, actually the first 6 months, we had 35 customers. Then our first full calendar year, we had maybe 100. Our second full calendar year, we had maybe 700. Third full calendar year, we had 5,100. So you start off really little by little and suddenly all at once. So I would go ahead and say, focus on building a product that either you or your initial users really love. Because building a product that people love is really difficult. Building a product that people are like, oh, this is cool, is easy. Building a product people truly love, that is really difficult. So you want to go ahead and build a product that somebody truly loves. If you can build that product, then you can probably identify 2, 3, 4, 5 other people that love the product. Then if you find 5 people, you can find 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, and so on. And I would go ahead and say that's how you want to start. Now, what I would go ahead and say is, and again, I don't know your business, but let's assume, for example, it's a marketplace. A lot of people try to go ahead and expand really quickly with marketplaces. In many instances, you're better off going really deep in a market, figuring that market out, then go ahead and expand into 1 or 2 other markets. Once you've been able to figure out 1, 2, 3 markets, and you have a repeatable, scalable go-to-market, then you go ahead and launch into 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. We tried to go ahead and launch into 5 at once, then 10, 25. Great. I got a lot of downloads in the early days. I felt really good, but I ended up creating a crappy product experience. Why? We would go ahead and launch on a campus. Great. We had 50 users, but we had 4 cars. So you want to go ahead and be intentional about that. And in terms of you guys are engineers, how do you get the word out? In the early days, you're really hustling. I mean, putting flyers in bathroom stalls, putting flyers on libraries, going ahead and begging your friends to post it on Instagram and stuff like that. It's really, really hacky in the early days.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you all so much for coming.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.